Okay. What you saying, producers? E.N.I on the track. Back on your box. Today's video, I'm going to be showing you my method for arranging and mixing a beat in Beatmaker 3. Again, I'm going into this video with no type beat in mind, but I've got something for a sample. I've got an idea for a sample. Thinking about flipping a Timbo melody. It's going to be familiar to you guys when you hear it. Let's see where it takes us. Also, if you haven't done so already, check out my beats channel where you'll find all the final results of beats made on these tutorials. Subscribe, like, drop a comment, let me know what you think of the finished work. But yeah, let's get into it. Because I want to make this video about arranging a beat and mixing the beat, I'm going to whiz through making the beat itself. But any tips I think are going to be useful for you guys along the way, I will stop to drop them gems. Usually for my YouTube mixes, I've got a stock limiter in place, just in case I get any loud kicks. Don't want to burst your eardrums. But yeah, when we get to the actual mixing stage, I'll turn off the stock limiter, stick on the one from FabFilter. Right, so I don't want to go with just that for obvious reasons. So let's try and switch it up. If you want to have control of velocity of the pads during live performance, just need to tap at this cog at the bottom here. And you see I've got it turned on, pads Y velocity. So if I play anywhere along the y-axis of the pad, you can see I'm controlling the velocity. See, this is good for drummers. You can use it in notes, but I'd prefer to use it for drums. So before I go any further, here's the sequencer window for Beatmaker 3. And in the screen, you can see already, I've recorded a pattern for the original melody. It's recorded over 8 bars, even though they're marked by odd numbers. I don't know why they do that. You access the sequencer mode by tapping on this button here. And you can see we're in song mode at the moment. Song mode is what you'd be familiar with if you come from FL Studio and you're used to seeing your patterns out in the playlist. And also for you guys on Logic. But for your Ableton heads, definitely scenes mode is where it's at for you guys. But anyways, we're focusing on a song view today. The pattern view just shows the pattern that you got selected. But there are only 2 modes that matter really when it comes to arranging the beat. So a lot of the time, I like to speed up my workflow when I'm trying to set up my first 8-bar loop to work with. I'll record the first 4 bars like I've done here. I'll repeat it. And then whilst I've got the last 2 modes still selected, if I highlight both, I can then merge that into one pattern. And while we're at this point, let's explain. I don't know what to call this yet. I'm going to call it the pattern list because that's the only way I could explain it really. It shows you the patterns that have been recorded in each bank so you can manage them, duplicate them, cut them, and also play around with changing patterns whilst performing in song mode. Now for the snare pattern, we've just merged 2 patterns into one. So we had pattern 1, we've repeated it, and then we merged it together and that created an 8-bar pattern 2. So I can choose to delete pattern 1, which is what I'm going to do now. So I'm left with pattern 2, but that is really my only pattern, of course. Let's get the rest of this beat cooked up. So now I've arrived at the mixer for the first time in this beat. I've got 2 instruments in the snares bank and I need to manage the volume of one of them. If I double tap on the bank header, that takes me to the individual pads. I'm going to manage the volume of the snare. So I'm going to take that faded out slightly for the purposes of filming. But this is also part of mixing as well. If it sounds harsh, you're going to take it down. So this bass is coming quite loud as well in the mix. So right away, just for performance purposes, I'm going to go to the bass 808 bank just to control the volume of that 808. And I should mention as well, because of my particular template and my setup, I won't be controlling them from the master faders. I'll be controlling them from the individual pads that they fall in within the banks. So now we've got our 8-bar looping. This is going to be pretty much what the loudest part of my track is going to be like. I may take out a couple of patterns, but this is pretty much what it's going to be. So we can head over to the mixer and we can start mixing down. And like I said earlier, I usually have a stock limiter turned on for my YouTube recordings. So I'm going to double tap on the main channel. That's going to open my effects panel. And now I'm going to turn this off and start working on the mix. So my first step in the mixing process is to mix in mono. Mixing in mono helps you to ensure that all your faders are set to the right levels for your track to be played out of a mono system. The typical and most important one, club speakers. If you want your tune to be thumping and staying consistent in club speakers, you've got to mix your track in mono so that when all the sound is squashed together in the middle coming out of a mono system, everything sits at the right level still. So for mixing in mono in Beatmaker 3, and you can do this with a stock plugin, it's the stereo widener. We can see the stereo width is already set to 100%. That's down the middle. I'm going to turn it all the way to 0%. And now we're in mono. If I play the track now, you'll hear that everything is squashed compared to how it's been while I've been making it. So you can hear everything sounds squashed. You'll understand it better if you've got headphones on. Everything sounds squashed in the center of your head. There is no stereo width to any of the instruments. So now the entire track is in mono, and now we can start mixing the beat. So for beats that are bass heavy, I tend to mix around the 808 or the bass line and the kick, and then add everything else around that. In fact, a good step for me, because I've duplicated pure synth so many times, it'd be a good idea for me to rename these. So to rename a bank or rename an audio track, hold and click on the bank. Usually the icon works. Tap on rename, and I can rename this. And yeah, I'll just go ahead and rename with these. Right, so now I've got all of my banks named. I know what I'm dealing with in the mixer. So the first thing we're going to deal with, like I said, is the 808 and the kick. So I'm going to mute everything else except for the bass 808 instrument that I've got and the 808s and kicks bank. So let's play this now. So first things first, because my ears are bleeding, I'm just going to go into the 808 kicks bank and turn down the volume of the kick for now. We'll work on the volume for that later. We're going to go into bass 808 and focus on this fader within the bank. And with good EQing, I should have cut out the high end of this bass anyways, so it shouldn't interfere with any high end frequency instruments that are playing also. So let's play this. So I'm going to set it at about that -6 dB mark, getting a reading of -9. But it sounds good. That's what it is. It's all about how it sounds to the ear. And you'll train your ear to work it out. So now I'm going to go back into the kicks bank and adjust the volume of the kick. So now I'm finished with the 808 and the kick. I'll bring in the snare and the hi-hats now just to make sure that all the drums, they're glued together and they sit well with each other before I bring in the melodies. So we'll unmute the snares and the hi-hats. Get this blown. So I think now that I've brought the hi-hat and the snare in, I think I want to take down the kick and this 808 completely. So now I'm going to start bringing the melodic instruments. I think I'm going to start with the open strings. Double tap on the bank header. So now we're looking at the pure synth pad within that bank to control the volume. Again, this is the case for my template because I have my main faders sent out to mix buses. In your own case, you can choose to use the main faders in your banks to control the volume of all your pads. But if you've got multiple instruments within a bank, it's always a good idea to double tap in that bank and manage the volume of the faders independently first. And then you can use the main bank fader to maintain the volume of the entire bank. So I've unmuted open strings. Let's play that. I'm going to unmute the mute guitar. Let's play that. So I'm pretty comfortable with that mix in mono. The volumes are set to a reasonable enough level for us to switch back to stereo now. And of course, we're going to go back and tweak the volumes again once I hear it in the stereo field. So now I'm done with mixing in mono. I'm going to double tap on my main fader. Let's reset that volume to 0. And I'm going to switch off the stereo wide now. We're going to hear the track now with a normal stereo field. I think that's sounding good. Let's head over to arranging this beat now. So back in the sequence of view of Beatmaker 3, and we want to arrange this beat. We know that it's 8 bars long. Most artists want to go for at least 16. So let's work on this track being a 16 bar, having a 16 bar verse and a 16 bar hook. It's likely going to have an intro to it as well. So we're looking at copying this over a fair few times. So to get this arrangement going, I'll double tap on the lasso button. That selects all of the patterns. And I can simply tap repeat multiple times. So I set this out so it's long enough that it resembles a track on the sequencer. So I like my beat intros to be quite empty, usually playing the main melody or a counter melody. And then I bring the drums slowly in with the hi-hats first and then impact with 808. So for that reason, I'm going to start by deleting the drum patterns that are set in this first 8 bars. With the lasso tool selected still, I can highlight multiple patterns and select my remove button down here. So now we've got only the melody patterns. Let's play these over 8 bars and work out which patterns to take out. Let me take out the bass straight away and play the rest. So I think I'm going to start with just the open strings bank and then bring the flamencos in the second half of that 8 bars. So we've got pattern 1. This is 8 bars long and I only want to use half of it. I've got 2 options. I could either, holding on the right handle here, drag along and reduce it to 4 bars and then drag the whole pattern over to the right side so it's 4 bars long using the first half of the 8 bars. Bear in mind that the original pattern is repeated over, so it's the same 4 bar loop over 8 bars. My second option, I could choose to cut this pattern in half. And to do this, we use the scissors tool and tap in to the nearest line where we want to cut against. The pattern is cut. Be careful to deselect the scissors tool once you're finally done with it, otherwise you'll find yourself tapping the screen and making multiple cuts, which you don't want. Definitely use it wisely. So you've cut this pattern in half, and what will happen in Beatmaker 3 is whenever a cut is made, a new pattern is generated with the offcut. As it's been created, it's also a unique pattern, so you can choose to add some variation to this particular pattern, add some different notes to it. So I've cut the first 4 bars of this loop. I'm going to remove it now. So let's hear the intro. I think I'm going to have the choir join for the second half of this loop as well, so I'm going to make the same cut. When I remove the pattern from the grid, or the playlist, however you want to describe it, the pattern still remains. We have to go over to our pattern list header to find it. We can hold and drag it back in. Because I made this slice halfway along this pattern, whenever I drop it back into the playlist now, it will be half that size. But I could choose to drag it along to get the full pattern again if I need it elsewhere. I'm going to delete the other 2 patterns that I don't need, and let's unmute the tracks and play it. That sounded pretty good. What is missing from this intro though is some transitions. So I'm going to go over to my transition bank and let's add something to this beat that lets the listener know that we're going from the intro into the hook. So I'm just going to look for a reverse cymbal. I think that'll work. So I've got a method I use to make sure that my reverse cymbals are hitting on beat. I'll go over to my sampler. I select the pad that my reverse sound impact symbol is on. And what I like to do is turn on live stretch. And with the live stretch turned on, the grid of the sampler now has more relevance to the speed of the sample. And by tweaking the tempo of the sample, I can determine how long the sample is going to play for. So I'll set it to 1.3. I think that's 2 bars. Right, so let's add that in. It's not going to be enough on its own. We're going to add some other sounds, but let's get that in anyways. I don't necessarily have to play in a pattern to record. I can also create an empty pattern and then paint my MIDI notes in. So with the selection tool selected in sequencer mode, I can double tap on the grid space and it creates a pattern for me. Double tap into that pattern and that opens up in the pattern window. I know that I need to set this first note. I need to set this note 2 bars in. Let's play that. Alright, so that's created there. That is that pattern. So I've got another note to add to my pattern. Sequencer view, double tap into the pattern. And I know this starts at the beginning of those 4 bars, so I can just paint a note in there. Because these are one-shot samples and I'm not playing them melodically, I can paint these in the pad view, knowing that they're set to the default C3. If I wanted to play these notes melodically, with the pad selected, I tap on this keyboard right here, and that takes me to a keyboard view where I could play this sample add a higher pitch or a low pitch. So I just want to manage the level of that now. That sounded good. That sounded good. Let's get into our verse section now after those 8 bars and the hook. And because we're working on the verse, let's just loop around 16 bars for our work. I'm going to start by deleting the bass patterns. I'll delete the flutes as well. I think they're good left in the hook only. Let's play the rest and work out which guitar we're going to take out from this in the beginning. I want to bring that flamenco guitar back in for the last 4 bars. So where I've got 4 bars of it elsewhere in the pattern, I can select that pattern, tap on repeat, and that will make a repeat, an identical clone of that pattern, not a new one. I can drag that along now, I place it where I want it. So let's hear these last 8 bars of the verse again. I think I'm going to add a second equalizer to the 808 with a high pass filter in it for the verse sections. I want to add some drops and cuts to the drums in this verse, and this is where grid sizing and the scissor tool work hand in hand. So if I size by 1/4, we can cut out the hi-hats and the kicks and leave just the snares playing in those 2 bars. So select the scissor tool, and a good rule to follow is chop from right to left if you want to cut a segment out of a pattern, and cut from left to right if you want to cut the tail off of a pattern. See, when I cut from right to left, the section that I want to cut out is already highlighted for me. I can select remove. If I cut from left to right, it's giving me the tail end of the pattern to delete. If I continue to cut, it's shrinking it down, but then it's continuing to make cuts. So I want to make sure I know from where I'm trying to cut the tail off. So I just want to cut this section out here, right to left, selected, tap remove. And the same for the kick, right to left, remove. So I think I'm missing a kick in this pattern. I know the pattern has the kick because it was there before I deleted it. So all I have to do is select pattern 1, drag the right handle along, and you'll see now that kick is appearing. Let's play the pattern. I think I can add more hi-hats to this before it drops. So I've dragged that over by a bar also. So there you go, guys. Mixing and arranging of a beat. I didn't get into panning and stereo width too much with this video. I think it's important for you to understand the basics of mixing and how to get a good basic mix in Beatmaker 3 as far as volumes are concerned. And then we got into arranging. So as always, I'm going to play the full beat at the end. If you're new to this channel and you haven't done so already and you like what you've seen today, make sure you subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you know when my next videos are coming out. Drop a like and let me know what you liked about the video in the comments. If you didn't like what you see today, drop a dislike as well. I hate a stellar rater. At least YouTube knows I'm doing something. And as I said earlier, guys, check out my beats page, show some love, subscribe. Let's get this subs up. Let's get the subs up for both of these channels. Let's get the name out there for iOS music production. And as always, guys, keep cooking.
E.N.I on the track.